I've been playing guitar for 25 years, and I can remember the exact riff and the exact moment I decided I wanted to play guitar. In that riff, you'll notice there's a requirement for a specific pedal. That pedal being the Digitech Whammy, the effect being a pitch shift off of a treadle. Where did that come from? Let's get into it. So pitch shifting has been around since basically reel-to-reel tape. They would take what they've taped, reduce the size of the capstan, or increase it, one or the other, change the size of it, and it would change the fundamental pitch of what has been recorded because it changes the speed. That's where the start point is. In order to get to the whammy, you need digitization and pitch bending, neither of which start on guitar. As is the case with most things that are great for guitar, they don't start there. So the pitch bend starts from the pitch wheel that you will see on keyboards and synthesizers and things of that nature. The first synthesizer, keyboard, whatever, to have that is the Mini Moog in 1970. That was the first time that you were capable of rolling a note on a keyboard and bending the pitch. The other thing that was required was the harmonizer, invented by Eventide in 1975 with the H910 or 910, I'm not entirely sure, which was predominantly used for vocals and then eventually trickled down into guitar stuff. But guitar did have pitch stuff before that point, and they got it from the greatest thing to happen to guitar ever, Fuzz. So the first guitar-based pitch muck-with thing was the Octavia, which is a Tycho Brahe fuzz. And it's just a sort of almost a mistake in the circuit where it takes a fundamental, multiplies it, and that gives you an octave above. Typically with the analog circuitry for pitch shifting, it will be an octave up. That's the case with most octave fuzzes, and was the case until 1975 with the MXR Blue Box, which nobody really liked. Jimmy Page used it a couple times, but nobody really used it. The low octave thing came in mainly for bass players through the Boss OC2 Octaver. This thing you will definitely have heard. It is predominantly used by bass players. It is all over the place on all sorts of stuff. They use it to make synthy sounds on their basses. It was used for everything. And the interesting thing so far, with all of the analog stuff, they are monophonic, meaning they have great tracking for one note. They have terrible tracking for more than one note. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I didn't really look into it. I don't particularly care. But what I will say is there's two types of pitch shifting, pitch modulation. Monophonic, polyphonic. Polyphonic tends to be digital, I think exclusively, whereas monophonic can be analog or digital, and it doesn't really matter. What's interesting is monophonic tracks really well, one note at a time, and it's extremely characterful because it's sort of a bit wrong for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure whether it blends into the signal better or whether it's just a specific quirkiness to it that feels more musical. Not necessarily even more musical, just more weird. Polyphonic took a while to get the tracking down, and I think they're there now. It is a direct replication. It's basically the difference between an analog delay and a digital delay. The way that they sort of sound, where the polyphonic is the digital delay, where it's like, oh yeah, that's a perfect recreation at a perfect volume. Whereas the monophonic, it's a bit weirder. It doesn't quite sound exactly the same, and as such, it's kind of cooler, at least in my opinion. Let's get to the pitch shifter that changed everything. It is to the 1990s what the wah was to the 1960s, the Digitech Whammy. It is on everything from that era, and you know it right away because it sounds so intentionally artificial. Now, over the years, they've worked that out a bit, but the Mark I from 1989, which was monophonic and glitched out and sounded weird and is Rage Against the Machine, it is the Tom Morello sound. Everything after that, you get into your Whammy 2s, Whammy DTs, Whammy 5s, etc. When you get into late 90s nu metal, early 2000s, your Muse, that stuff is polyphonic. Even up to today with Gojira, everyone who uses a Whammy bravely uses them, well, all over the map, but especially on 2 octaves up. Most people, myself included, when you first get into the weirdness of a whammy, you go 1 octave up. But if you're brave enough, you throw it on 2 octaves up and you get that cat underneath the car tire. Ooh. Yeah, you get that sound. So what are the benchmark examples of pitch shifting that have ever existed? Obviously, eventide harmonizers of all sorts. You'll hear them, especially throughout the 80s. A lot of double-tracked sounding solos. They may not have been double-tracked. They may have just been a harmonizer using thirds or fourths or fifths or whatever. Me, I'm a pleb. I tend to stick to the octaves. The whammy, super important. That was used all over the place in octaves, detunes, harmonized sections, all of it. The Electro Harmonix Pog did multiple pitch shifts at once. Makes your guitar signal sound kind of organish. But the baby version, the Micro Pog, is the sort of thing that it's the one that sticks. And that all that is 3 volumes. You have your dry, octave down, and you have an octave up algorithm. And you just mix those 3 sounds. It's brilliant. The Boss OC2, the Octavia type octave fuzz. But also there's the pitch shifting that comes in delay and reverb. These are your shimmers. I think most of that's developed by Eventide, but that's been brought in by everyone from Line 6, Strymon, Maris, all of that stuff. And also a pitch shifty creativity pedal, what I think is the definitive Chase Bliss pedal, the Chase Bliss Mood. Me saying I think it's the definitive Chase Bliss pedal, knowing it's actually a collaborative design with Old Blood Noise Endeavors, Drolo Effects, and Chase Bliss. And yet, nothing's more Chase Blissy than a Mood. So obviously I'm biased based on the beginning of the video, where the first guitar noise I heard involved pitch shifting. And most of the guitar noises I listen to, even today, involve pitch. It's become more and more commonplace for these bands to be more difficult to form, or if they do, they tend to be smaller, meaning you have more work to do as a guitar player. You have more space to fill. You have bands like Royal Blood, for instance, who just is a bass player who sounds like everyone. That's a Jack White trick from using a Pog, just in reverse, using the octave up for the bass instead of an octave down to fake a bass. But the prevalence, which allows the band to be more inventive or out of necessity, that's super cool, because these things have been around for decades. They've been prominent my entire life, and I'm fucking old. They keep finding new ways through new bands, through new people, and new ideas to keep evolving pitch shifting, and in so doing, evolving music. And the music's all that really matters.